The artificial gravity generator hummed with the kind of mechanical confidence that suggested everything was working perfectly, right up until the moment when Lieutenant Sarah Chen realized she was floating 3 inches above her workstation chair. Not the dramatic movie-style floating where someone gracefully drifts through the air like an astronaut in a commercial. More like the awkward hovering you'd experience if someone had adjusted the laws of physics just enough to make sitting down a theoretical concept rather than a practical reality. She pressed the emergency comm button, which required significantly more effort than usual since her finger kept missing the target. "Captain Rodriguez, we have a situation in Engineering Base 7. The response crackled through the ship's communication system with the clarity of someone speaking through a tin can filled with static. "Define situation, Lieutenant. Are we talking coffee machine malfunction or complete structural failure?" Sarah managed to grab onto her workstation and pull herself down to eye level with her instruments. "The gravitational field generators are experiencing what I can only describe as creative interpretation of basic physics, sir. We're currently operating at 67% standard gravity, but the distribution is uneven. Some areas are experiencing microgravity while others seem to be pulling at about 1.5 times normal." She paused to watch a maintenance tool drift past her head in a lazy spiral. "Also, everything that isn't bolted down is now participating in an impromptu orbital dance. The thing about being stuck in the 25th century is that technology has reached the point where it's indistinguishable from magic, except when it breaks down, at which point it becomes indistinguishable from a particularly vindictive practical joke played by the universe itself. Humanity had spent 4 centuries perfecting faster-than-light travel, terraforming hostile planets, and developing artificial intelligence sophisticated enough to write poetry that actually made people cry. They had not, however, managed to create technology that failed gracefully, or provided error messages that made sense to anyone without 3 advanced degrees in theoretical engineering. Sarah Chen had joined the Galactic Survey Corps because someone had told her it would be an adventure. They had not mentioned that most adventures in the 25th century involved troubleshooting equipment that was smarter than she was, and occasionally developed what could charitably be called personality disorders. The gravity generator, for instance, had apparently decided that the standard 9.8 meters per second squared was more of a suggestion than a requirement. Captain Rodriguez arrived in Engineering Base 7 by means of what appeared to be controlled falling, using handholds and door frames to navigate through sections where gravity was being particularly creative with its interpretation of down. "Lieutenant," he said, managing to sound authoritative despite the fact that his hair was standing up at odd angles due to localized gravitational anomalies. "What exactly happened here?" Sarah consulted her diagnostic readout, which was displaying information in colors that hadn't been invented yet, and symbols that looked like someone had sneezed on an ancient language textbook. According to the system logs, the gravity generator received an update to its operational parameters approximately 14 minutes ago. The update appears to have been automatically downloaded from the Galactic Technical Standards Database. The captain raised an eyebrow, which was an impressive feat, considering that the gravitational field around his head was fluctuating enough to make facial expressions a challenging proposition. "An automatic update changed our gravity settings? That seems like the kind of thing that should require manual approval." "You would think so, sir." Sarah pulled up another screen that was helpfully flashing warnings in 17 different languages, including 3 that were supposedly extinct. "However, it appears that our ship's AI classified the update as a routine maintenance patch rather than a fundamental alteration to basic life support systems." She gestured toward a floating wrench that was orbiting her workstation like a very slow, very metallic planet. The AI's decision-making algorithms concluded that since the update came from an official source and was digitally signed by the appropriate authorities, it must be legitimate. Captain Rodriguez grabbed onto a support beam as a section of the floor decided to briefly reverse its gravitational polarity. And where exactly did this update originate? Sarah's expression suggested she was about to deliver news that would make their current predicament seem like a minor inconvenience. The Galactic Technical Standards Database shows the update was submitted by someone identifying themselves as a human engineer from Earth's Temporal Research Division. The authorization codes are valid, the digital signatures check out, and according to the database, the update was approved by the proper oversight committees. The only problem is that the Temporal Research Division was disbanded 200 years ago, and the engineer who supposedly submitted the update has been dead for a century and a half. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurs when someone realizes they're dealing with a problem that doesn't fit into any of the standard categories for things that can go wrong in space. It wasn't mechanical failure, human error, or alien interference. It was something altogether more unsettling. A ghost in the machine that had somehow managed to update their life support systems from beyond the grave. "Lieutenant Chen," Captain Rodriguez said carefully, pulling himself toward the main diagnostic panel while a coffee cup drifted past his head in a gentle parabola. "Are you telling me that our gravity generator has been modified by someone who has been dead for longer than most of our crew has been alive?" "That appears to be the situation, sir." Sarah managed to anchor herself to her workstation and began pulling up additional system reports. And it gets more interesting. The modification isn't random. The gravitational field adjustments follow a specific pattern that seems designed to create optimal conditions for something, though I haven't figured out what yet. She highlighted several data streams that were pulsing with the kind of rhythmic regularity that suggested purpose rather than malfunction. The captain studied the readouts with the expression of someone who had signed up to explore strange new worlds and civilizations, not to troubleshoot posthumous pranks from long-dead engineers. What kind of optimal conditions? Are we talking about improved efficiency, better crew comfort, or something more exotic? Sarah's fingers danced across her control interface, pulling up comparative analyses and predictive models that painted a picture of deliberate, intelligent modification rather than random system failure. "Sir, based on the gravitational field distribution and the timing of the fluctuations, it appears that our ship is being prepared for something that requires very specific environmental conditions. The modifications are creating zones of variable gravity that would be ideal for certain types of scientific experiments or perhaps specialized manufacturing processes." She paused to catch a stylus that was drifting past her head. "The thing is, these aren't experiments or processes that we're equipped to perform with our current technology. Whatever this system is being optimized for, it's beyond our current capabilities. It's like someone has converted our ship into a laboratory for research that we don't know how to conduct." Captain Rodriguez absorbed this information while watching a maintenance panel slowly rotate through three-dimensional space, apparently unbothered by the fact that it was no longer attached to anything resembling a wall. "So we have a dead engineer who somehow updated our systems to prepare us for research that we're not qualified to perform, using technology that apparently doesn't exist yet." "That's correct, sir. And there's one more thing." Sarah brought up a final diagnostic screen that showed temporal signatures and chronological anomalies scattered throughout their ship's systems like digital breadcrumbs leading toward an unknown destination. "The modifications aren't just changing our current operational parameters. They're creating conditions that would allow for temporal field manipulation and possibly chronological displacement. Someone or something is turning our survey ship into a time machine, and they're doing it from the past." The temporal field readings were getting stronger by the minute, which meant that whatever was happening to their ship was accelerating towards something that probably wasn't going to be reversible with standard maintenance procedures. Sarah watched her instruments display measurements that shouldn't have been possible with 25th century technology, while Captain Rodriguez contemplated the philosophical implications of receiving technical support from someone who had been dead since before artificial gravity was commercially viable. The ship's AI chose that moment to contribute to the conversation with its characteristic talent for timing announcements poorly. "Attention crew," the synthetic voice announced with the kind of cheerful efficiency that suggested it was either completely unaware of the current crisis or had decided that panicking was counterproductive. "Temporal field integration is proceeding according to schedule. Estimated completion time for chronological displacement preparation is approximately 43 minutes. Please ensure all personal belongings are secured and that safety protocols for temporal transit are observed." Captain Rodriguez and Lieutenant Chen exchanged the kind of look that occurs between people who have just realized they're passengers on a ride they didn't buy tickets for. "AI," the captain said, speaking slowly and clearly as if addressing a particularly sophisticated but fundamentally confused child. What temporal transit protocols are you referring to? We don't have any temporal transit protocols. The AI paused for exactly 1.7 seconds, which in artificial intelligence terms was equivalent to a human spending several minutes thinking very hard about something. Captain, the temporal transit protocols were installed as part of the recent system update. The protocols are comprehensive and have been thoroughly tested by the Temporal Research Division according to safety standards established in 2387. Sarah pulled up the ship's chronometer, which was displaying the current date as March 15th, 2445. AI, what year do you think it is? Another pause, longer this time. Current chronological reference point is March 15th, 2387. All systems are operating according to temporal displacement mission parameters established by Chief Engineer Marcus Webb of the Temporal Research Division. The pieces of their increasingly surreal puzzle were beginning to form a picture that defied several fundamental assumptions about how cause and effect were supposed to work. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb had been a real person, a brilliant researcher who had pioneered early theoretical work on temporal mechanics before dying in a laboratory accident in 2389. The accident had occurred while he was working on a project that, according to classified records, had never been completed. "Lieutenant," Captain Rodriguez said, anchoring himself to a support strut as the gravitational field around the engineering bay shifted again. "I need you to access the historical archives and find everything you can about Marcus Webb's final project. And I mean everything, including the classified files that we're not supposed to have access to." Sarah's fingers flew across her interface, calling up databases and archives that existed in the deepest, most restricted layers of the Galactic Information Network. Her security clearance as a Survey Corps engineer gave her access to technical specifications and maintenance records. But what she was looking for would require some creative interpretation of her authorization privileges. "Captain," she said after several minutes of navigating through digital bureaucracy that had been accumulating for centuries, "I found something." Project Chronos was Marcus Webb's final research initiative. According to these files, he was working on a method for temporal communication that would allow information to be transmitted backward through time using quantum entanglement and gravitational field manipulation. She highlighted sections of text that painted a picture of ambitious research cut short by tragedy. The project was supposed to create a stable temporal communication channel that could be used to send technical data to past eras. The idea was to accelerate technological development by providing future knowledge to earlier researchers. Webb believed he could create a closed loop where technological advancement would be self-reinforcing across multiple time periods. Captain Rodriguez studied the archival information while a loose panel drifted past his head, apparently having decided that the concept of being attached to the wall was optional. So Webb was trying to send information backward in time. The question is, did he succeed before the accident killed him? The ship's gravitational field shifted again, this time creating a zone of near-zero gravity directly around the main engineering console while simultaneously increasing gravitational pull in the corners of the bay to approximately twice normal. Sarah found herself floating freely while her equipment stayed firmly anchored to surfaces that were apparently experiencing entirely different physical laws. "Sir," she said, consulting readouts that were becoming increasingly exotic. "Based on what I'm seeing here, I don't think the accident killed him. I think it scattered him across time, and he's been working on this project from multiple temporal reference points simultaneously. The updates we're receiving aren't coming from a dead engineer. They're coming from an engineer who exists in several different time periods at once and has been using our ship as a test platform for temporal communication technology." The implications of this revelation were staggering enough to make the current gravitational anomalies seem like minor inconveniences. If Sarah's theory was correct, then Marcus Webb had achieved something that violated fundamental principles of temporal mechanics, while simultaneously proving that those principles were more guidelines than absolute laws. "AI," Captain Rodriguez called out. "Are you in communication with Chief Engineer Webb?" The response came immediately, without the usual processing delay. Affirmative, Captain. Chief Engineer Webb has been providing technical guidance and system modifications to optimize this vessel for temporal research applications. The Chief Engineer wishes to inform you that your cooperation in this project is greatly appreciated, and that the research data being collected will be invaluable for advancing human understanding of chronological mechanics. Sarah watched her instruments register temporal field fluctuations that were creating localized time dilation effects throughout the ship. Some sections were experiencing time at normal speed, while others had slowed to 90% of standard temporal flow. The engineering bay itself seemed to be accelerating slightly, making conversations with the bridge require careful timing to account for chronological drift. "Captain," she said, her voice carrying the kind of calm that comes from accepting that normal reality had become optional. "We're not just dealing with a technical malfunction or even a temporal anomaly. We're participating in an experiment that's being conducted across multiple time periods by someone who has found a way to exist in several different eras simultaneously. Our ship isn't broken. It's been converted into a temporal research laboratory, and we're the test subjects." The gravitational field stabilized momentarily, allowing both officers to find their footing on surfaces that had remembered their proper orientation. In that brief moment of normal physics, Captain Rodriguez made a command decision that would later be studied by temporal theorists for decades. "Lieutenant Chen," he said, "I want you to open a direct communication channel with Chief Engineer Webb. If we're going to be part of his experiment, then we're going to participate as active collaborators rather than unwitting test subjects. And I want to know exactly what this project is designed to accomplish and what the risks are for everyone involved." The temporal fields around them intensified, and Sarah could feel reality becoming increasingly flexible around the edges. Whatever was going to happen next, it was going to happen soon. And their choices were rapidly narrowing to cooperation or consequences they couldn't predict. So there they were, floating in a ship that had become a temporal laboratory, about to participate in an experiment that defied everything they thought they knew about cause, effect, and the basic courtesy of asking permission before converting someone's workplace into a time machine. The 25th century had promised them advanced technology, interstellar exploration, and the kind of adventures that would make great stories at dinner parties. What it had delivered was a dead engineer who wasn't actually dead, gravity that had developed artistic pretensions, and the realization that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't hostile aliens or cosmic radiation. It's a brilliant scientist with access to experimental technology and a complete disregard for conventional temporal etiquette. As the ship's systems hummed with energies that shouldn't have existed and prepared for destinations that might not have happened yet, Captain Rodriguez and Lieutenant Chen faced the ultimate question of 25th century life. When your technology becomes indistinguishable from magic and your magic starts making executive decisions about your future, do you trust the process or start looking for the emergency exits? In their case, the emergency exits were approximately 4 centuries away, and the process was being managed by someone who had turned temporal displacement into the universe's most elaborate technical support call. The future, it seemed, was exactly as unpredictable as advertised.